いわゆる隠密の魔法が使えますと。
へえ。
音が鳴らなくなる。
Yeah, everybody in attendance tonight, get a bottle in your hands and pull up. And if you are K and me, hate it.
Hello, and welcome to Inconsequential Souls. Today, I wanted to have a discussion with you all that I thought we'd never have. Recently, there was some gameplay footage released for Dark Souls 3 featuring several of the classes that I guess went underrepresented when the demo was released, which I found out was more of an event that people went to get their hands on the game rather than it being a network test like the first time around. So I guess because of the underrepresentation, they wanted to kind of show off some mechanics that didn't, I guess, get enough love from the people who went to go play the gameplay footage, or to play the game and then show footage for, I guess, their perspective that they, I guess, ventured through in the game to showcase to their audiences, which I thought was really cool because, again, like I said in my other videos, I would have looked for different things, and I'm kind of glad that this video footage was released because it's kind of a representation of the route that I would have took, and so now I feel a little bit better because now I can talk about some of the things that I think are kind of important to, I guess, a certain group of people who enjoy Dark Souls series, who I think probably didn't get what they were looking for from the players who released footage for the game. And again, I'll reinforce, not to say that they didn't do a good job. It's just that everybody gets their own their own perspective from the game, and they enjoy certain aspects of the game differently, which is what makes Dark Souls really cool. So now, I didn't think I'd be able to, but now I get to discuss some of the things that I would have wanted to talk about. So let's get to it. Okay, so the first thing that I want to get out of the way is that this is going to be a discussion about the assassin class, which was represented in the network test by the Academy Assassin. Now, from what I can tell, the two classes are kind of related, because it's kind of difficult to explain, but I'll try to do my best to keep it short. So in the network test, I had a problem with the Academy Assassin class. I explained it in a previous video about why it is that I thought that the class is kind of strange, and I tried to recreate my version or my interpretation of what an Academy Assassin would look like. Now, I tried to be creative and go more magic heavy rather than magic light because I was going to the arena, and since I already kind of had a stealthy thief, and there are different types of assassins, or I would say rogue type characters, I wanted to do something a little different and be a little bit more aggressive, but still maintain the spirit of a rogue class or an assassin class. But in comparison to the game demo, the assassin still uses spells. However, these spells are more passive spells, whereas they're more of like a support. It seems like it's more of a support cast where it allows the assassin to be the stealthy character that they want to be without depending too much on the attack spells, from what I could tell, which I thought was really cool because even though I didn't, I would say, represent it in the footage that I kind of provided as an example for what I think an Academy Assassin would be like, I did have an idea of what the assassin might play like if they were more dependent on, I would say, like the passive spells. Even though in one of my previous videos, I kind of spoke about how most of the spells from Vinheim specifically had to do with stealth. A few of them were more Ulasil spells that had to do with stealth, but it was in my opinion that it wasn't really necessary to go that far. Just more so kind of reinforce the idea that yes, the character that you're using is an assassin, and yes, they're more than likely from Vinheim. And I believe that they did that really well, showcasing the assassin class in the demo. Now, this is the tricky part that's kind of hard to discuss because, well, a lot of times when you mention passive spells, they're really difficult to use against real players. Like, they have their consistent use to a certain degree against like enemies and certain mobs and NPCs, but for the most part, against other players, they're not really that effective. And this is where it got really cool for me. What they seem to have done in Dark Souls 3 is really compile spells and streamline them. And what I mean by that, for example, is that the assassin has a passive spell, but the spell has multiple effects. So, for example, one of the spells that the assassin class had was called Spook, if I recall correctly, which is no different than Hush, the Hush spell from Dark Souls 1, but it's sort of like it was also combined with Fall Control. So even though the spell might be very situational, Fall Control, even though it's also a very situational spell, it has uses in PvP. For example, one of the things I used to do when I played kind of like assassin rogue type characters in the arena is I would wear trousers like the flying feline boots, or the jester's greaves or pants, I forgot what they're called, to reduce fall damage. And what was funny is that you were able to kind of go up on these really high rises, attack your opponent, and then jump off freely without taking any damage. And it's sort of like if I could have chosen excuse me, if I could have chosen a different pair of greaves or something a little bit more effective, or that had a different effect, but I could have just cast a spell like Spook, it would have been really cool because then I could just take advantage of both effects. And if, like, for example, Fall Control would definitely take effect because that's the spell I was trying to use. However, if the Hush spell came into effect by happenstance because the circumstances called for it, it would also be very cool. And so, and that's just not talking about that one passive spell. There's quite a few examples of how spells have been streamlined that I want to get into. One of the examples being the Pyromancer's spells. One of them I seen was the the fireball spell, for example, that it doesn't really see a lot of mileage for obvious reasons. I won't get into exactly why, but it's sort of like one of the problems in Dark Souls was that there were just better spells. Like at a certain level, there were just better spells to use, and it kind of overshadowed the lower level ones. The Pyromancer spell kind of did the same thing where it's more streamlined, where now, for example, the fireball spell and combustion are one and the same. Whereas now you can have a mix-up game with a very basic pyromancy spell, which means that now you can do more with less in Dark Souls 3 rather than having to cycle through spells that are very situational. I thought that was very cool and a very smart move on their part. Okay. So let's get into this assassin class. Oh, so good. Oh, so good. Okay. So what's really neat about the assassin class is the equipment. It appeared that the assassin was equipped with an S-stock, target shield, and the standard wand that most sorcerer starting classes start the game with. Or I'm sorry, a catalyst. That's what it's usually called. Now I was kind of surprised about the S-stock. I've never really used one myself in any Souls game, and from the footage, it appears to be a longer version of a Mailbreaker, but I can't say for sure. Even if that's the case, though, the gameplay feels familiar. It's really funny. It reminded me of a cross between how I play my thief when I'm using a Mailbreaker and my jester when I'm using the channeler's trident. It was sort of like a healthy mix between those two fighting styles, and I guess that's one of the reasons why I really enjoyed watching the assassin gameplay, because I'm pretty sure I'm going to be good with that character, because it's sort of like two styles that I have really strong gameplay with being kind of compressed into one loadout, if that makes any sense. And it kind of looked like one of the weapon arts for that S-stock might be a shield piercing technique, which would kind of replace the strong attack that I usually dish out to counter opponents with the channeler's trident, which I usually put a poison effect on. But I don't know, I think a shield busting type attack is a great trade-off if that's how it works. That it appears that's how it works, but I can't really be sure, because a lot of things are going to be different in Dark Souls 3, so there's no guarantee that a lot of the techniques that I used in Dark Souls 2 and 1 will apply here. But it did look really good, and I don't know, it's not what I expected, but it seems perfect at the same time. Now, going back to the philosophy that it seems that they're using now in Dark Souls 3 with doing more with less, I think that would even apply to the weapons, like that S-stock weapon. And I'm looking forward to the idea that you can actually fall in love with the weapon. Like, I remember in Dark Souls 2, weapons were good because of their move sets, of course. but a lot of times you were forced to kind of switch weapons to change your style up a little bit. And I didn't have a problem with that. I thought that type of gameplay was really good and very useful. But weapons, you should be allowed to be really creative with weapons. And a weapon should kind of play its part as being circumstantial rather than being circumstantial and locked into a predictable move set. And the weapon arts allow you to kind of escape that trap. But, of course, at the same time, the weapon arts are so diverse that you have those to include with, of course, like your back step stabs, your side step attacks, your roll attacks, your weak attacks, your strong attacks, your tilt attacks. It's really this whole philosophy that they're using now is really broadening gameplay. And it's even beyond theory at this point. It's almost kind of factual, because even if you consider the very basic gameplay of having spells or some sort of spellcasting catalyst in one hand and an attack weapon in the other, both magic and weapons are kind of being streamlined. I mean, I wouldn't use streamlined for the weapons, but the magic is being streamlined. So it has its own systems and subsystems, whereas the weapons are just getting better systems. So, wow, just thinking about that, like that's pretty. Wow, that's a pretty huge leap, I feel, from the second game. Like, if you consider Dark Souls 1 and its gameplay, and the advancements that it made going from 1 to 2, as far as character commands and abilities are concerned, and of course, like the different types of magic and spells and weapons you can use, it's a huge leap. Like, considering the type of gameplay that you can expect going into the third game, it's almost leaps and bounds ahead of both games, to the point where you would think this was like Dark Souls 5, in my opinion. And that's not a bad thing. I think that's a very good thing. I mean, wow, with everything else that's so great about this game right now, the fact that like move sets are going to be greater than stats and damage output, I mean, for real this time, that's just going to be so fun. I really can't wait. Like, this game's going to be amazing. I mean, even taking into consideration that spells, like a lot of spells are going to do multiple things. Like, I can really see me creating a character who just uses, maybe at low levels, or higher levels, depending on how the final product comes out. But I can really see myself just having a regular pyro flame using fireball, even until like mid-high levels, because it's so good. I mean, as long as your flame is strong, and you upgrade it and it's powerful, like, why not? It's so convenient. And then, if spells are gonna really stay effective, they're gonna be unique enough to where they don't stop being useful when you get a better version, if the whole better version thing still exists in Dark Souls 3. Like, wow. That's gonna be so good. I can see myself doing something like that. So now you don't have to commit a whole bunch of attunement slots. And see, that's another cool thing, is that a utility spell can truly just be a utility spell. It's just something you kind of know and you use to the best of your ability, but you don't have to be a mage. You don't have to commit all this attunement. You get yourself 1 or 2 slots and you can do several spells, or 1 or 2 spells that are really good spells. And they're not super situational to where you have to do all of this swapping and stuff. Like, I really like the direction they're going in with combat right now. It's looking really good in my opinion. I mean, everything just feels right. Everything is just looking so good. I mean, I know no game is perfect, but this game is seeming pretty darn close. The release date is right around the corner, and I'm excited for it. So, this has been Inconsequential Souls, Assassin's Arts. I hope to see you all in the game. And this has been one wild ride. I went from kinda really scared to pretty confident that this is going to be the definitive Souls game. So thanks for watching, and I hope to see you next time.
Remember that? In before sundown, out before sunrise. In the hood, rolling with the neighborhood guys. Physically, I know I can't rewind, but every once in a while in my mind I travel.
Hey yo, Phil, for real, between me and you, way back in 4th grade, I had a Jerry curl too. The boys showing off, straining to make a muscle. Yes, no, maybe letters to see if the girl love you. Grandparents spoil you to keep you up out of trouble. Mama, dad say it once, better listen on the double. Break dancing on the cardboard at the cookout. Come late, won't miss a plate, cause auntie gon' look out. High school, thought it was cool. Bubble on my Air Nikes. Kids trying to be like Nino Brown or Spike Lee. Fresh wigs, baggy jeans, Echo Unlimited. The hip hop style in the mic, we were rocking it. 4th Dimension nights was the crew, we rolled deep. When you had to battle the beat, called the MC. Most rappers don't get it, America gone wild. I miss the days when music used to educate the child.